Hey there, welcome back. I want to conclude my ranting by talking about the environmental crisis. Now, I'm a fairly well-informed citizen. I understand and appreciate the dangers of climate change. At least I thought I did. I've seen an inconvenient truth 2 or 3 times. I understand the greenhouse effect, and I thought I understood the perils of global warming. But I have failed to really appreciate the absolute danger to humanity that it presents. It's not just the danger of losing a few animal species or uh, more violent wildfires and mudslides in California, increased frequency and strength of tropical storms on the East Coast. It's a threat to human existence. It's real, and it needs to be taken very seriously if we are to survive as a species and have a habitable place to live. Now, my crisis over all of this has been brought about by reading this book, Falter, it's called. It's by Bill McKibben. The subtitle is, Has the Human Game Begun to Play Itself Out? It's #1 New York Times bestseller. I'm reading it for my environmental ethics class. It lays out in clear and distinct fashion how the very existence of the Earth as a planet fit for human habitation is at imminent risk. There have been 5 mass extinctions on this planet, all carbon-based, and now we're talking about a 6th one, which will include us. I mean, really, how much can you take? I encourage you to read this book. What it and others like it demonstrate is that there is a limit. Earth as we know it can cease to exist. There's a scene in Woody Allen's Annie Hall where young Alvy Singer is taken to see a psychiatrist by his mother because he's depressed and won't do anything. Young Alvy explains to the shrink that he's read that the universe is expanding and that someday it will break apart and that will be the end of everything. So, what's the point? Young Alvy asked. What's the point of doing anything? Well, this is a great philosophical question. If the world is going to end, is there some point to living? For all of us, the experience of living is relatively short. I mean, what's the life expectancy? 79 today? It's declining in the United States. As the musical group The Fools sang in 1988, life sucks and then you die. So what's the point? Alvy was concerned with the world ending in a few billion years. Now, I think we can all agree that we don't need to get upset or concerned about ending in a few billion years. However, it's closer than that now. What is the world going to be like for my great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren in the year 2200? What will the food supply be like? It's in danger today. What will the water supply be like? Will there be peace and prosperity? Or will there be endless wars among climate refugees fighting for scarce resources? What's more probable for 2200? Life as it is today, or life as it was depicted in Mad Max? This is part of my existential crisis. Am I being overly dramatic? Am I being overly climate concerned? Well, you tell me, if you watch our fellow citizens today as we deal with the pandemic and look at how our politicians act and have dealt with the environmental crisis, that you can have any confidence that we can come together, that's required, community action, that we can come together to stop this trajectory that we're on towards environmental catastrophe. Like young Alvy, I'm depressed because I sense that it's coming to an end. What's the point? What's the point of anything when you're on the eve of destruction? I told you that I read the book for my class in environmental ethics. Ethics is moral philosophy. We've talked about that. It's about doing the right thing, the moral thing. Moral questions are about matters of vital human interest. Survival of us as a species is certainly of vital human interest. How should we address this? How should we address the morality of climate change? Here's an ethical question. Should we care? Should I care that we're on the eve of destruction? We won't be here. Our children won't be here. Our grandchildren won't be here. Maybe even our great-grandchildren will be here. So why should I suffer from the burden of losing the benefits of fossil fuel and unrestrained consumption for some unknown future? After all, the future generations will solve this problem, won't they? They always do. It'll all just work out. Well, I suggest it's not going to work out if we don't do the right thing now. And I'll argue that we have a duty, an obligation to do the right thing for our planet, for our great-grandchildren, for our future. Go back to Grandfather Philosophy number 6, where we talked about Kant's goodwill and our duty to do the right thing. And number 7, where I talked about making it better. That was what John Lewis was about, making it better. There's no question that we are facing catastrophic environmental harm. So what action do we have a duty to take? Do the fossil fuel industries have a duty to restrict extraction of fossil fuels from the earth and the pumping out of millions of cubic whatevers into the atmosphere every minute? Do utilities have a duty to shift from fossil fuel electricity production to renewable electricity production? Or in both these cases, are the duties of the fossil fuel industries and the utilities only to their shareholders and their share prices? Consequentialist moral theories, like utilitarianism, hold that the right moral decision, the right moral choice, is that which has the greatest good consequences for the greatest number of people. What if you had a task of writing the energy policy for the United States, and you had to justify your proposals based upon utilitarian principles? Now, you could do a good job of justification of continued use of fuels and extractions if you happen to be at a university funded by the Koch brothers. But the greatest good for the greatest number? I mean, please, when sea levels are rising, entire coastal populations are being destroyed, when droughts and flooding and wildfires are destroying the human habitats for so many, currently mostly brown people, do you not have a duty to make it better? So what's the right thing, the good thing for us to do with respect to our environment? What would yield the greatest good for the greatest number? What is our duty to the future habitability of the planet? We humans, through our efforts, have put this beautiful planet and the source of life, our life, in danger. And it will die if we don't start worshiping it instead of some idea that there is a better world after we die. If that's the case, if life on this earth is just some way station to a better life, then why should we care about the planet? Why should we care about preserving the planet for future generations? Why should we not just go ahead and die and move on to a better existence? I, for one, don't think like that. Regardless of how you think this world came to exist, it is a creation itself that is worth worshiping. It is Mother Earth. I believe that we have a need to care for that. I'd like my great-grandchildren to the sixth power to have a wonderful world to inhabit. Not Mad Max, but the world of Star Trek in the 24th century, without Romulans, of course. I was taught that I have a responsibility to leave the world a better place than I found it, and I'll bet you were too. Global warming is a threat to our existence. Now, how do we deal with threats? Political theory, social contract theory, says that we created government to deal with internal and external threats to our society. We, through our national government, must stop this threat of environmental catastrophe posed by the superheating of the planet by burning fossil fuels. How do you think our government is doing? Well, it doesn't take very long a Google search to see all the examples of how the Trump administration is undermining efforts to protect the environment. And I don't see anything happening in Congress, not since Senator Inhofe and his snowball. I mean, how can you have any hope? Honestly, I don't. My thesis is that philosophy helps. That's the theme in these videos. There's two questions presented here. One, how can philosophy help us solve the crises, the creeping authoritarianism crisis and the environmental crisis? How can philosophy help us solve these problems? And the second question is, how can philosophy help us as individuals deal with the distress that they cause in us? Well, in philosophy, reason and logic are the path to right answers. The answer to the first question is not complicated. Reason and logic value truth and knowledge. Somehow that's lost on our political leaders today, especially those in one of the tribes. We need to educate ourselves and our youth on the value of truth and knowledge seeking and on critical thinking. We need to morally evaluate our problems, develop rational and logical solutions to them. We need to act in accordance with our duty to do the right thing to make it better. With reason and knowledge and truth-seeking, we can do that and we can find solutions to make it better. Will we? I don't have faith that we will. Maybe. I know one thing. I know that my progeny will not experience the physical world that I do. It will almost certainly be less grand and more harsh. And that's disappointing. That makes me sad. So if the world and America as we know it is going to end, how can philosophy help us deal with the second question, which is the stress that I felt and many people feel facing these crises? I will offer in the next 2 videos a way to address this. But until then, ponder this. Think about this. What's the point of life now? Philosophy shows us that living is the point of life. It can teach us that life has meaning and value and joy every day, regardless of how bad things are or how bad they become. Keep in mind the words of the great Monty Python philosopher Eric Idle. Always look on the bright side of life. Until next time, stay safe.